How you doing? Welcome back to McGold-Riffs. It's been a while. You know, it's been a while because I'm very choosy about my guests. So I was looking and looking around, and I found a monster. My buddy Tony Savarino, thank you, Tony, for sending me, telling me about Billy Loosigian. So this is episode number 45, shot in May of 2023. And again, 45 of these. We've been doing this for 5 years now, so 9 or 10 a year, and it's a blast, and it's just so cool to meet some of these great players. So here's a little bit of Billy's story here. Billy started playing professionally at the age of 14. He teamed up with Willie Loco Alexander in 1976, way back when in the last century, to form the Boom Boom Band, recording 2 albums for MCA, and he opened for Elvis Costello, Rockpile, and the Ramones. You know, great stuff, like iconic bands from that period of time. Toured with Andy Pratt, who I think is from around here, isn't he?
Yeah,
Andy,
Cambridge.
right? Yeah, and Robin Lane and the Chartbusters, and Robin should have been Chrissy Hine.
She's
type,
beautiful.
You know, I mean, she should have been that level, like the Pretenders were. And the Nervous Eaters, which were also an iconic band during those periods of time. He did session work with producer Michael Johnson, the name I've heard, Clarence Clemens, wow, and Procol Harum. In '88, from the ashes of the disintegrated Nervous Eaters, Billy formed the Joneses with Brad Halen, John Sands, and singer-songwriter David Finnerty. Within a year, they had interest from record labels signing with this little known guy named Amit Ertegun. I never know how to say it. Ertegun. At Atlantic Records. So you know a little bit about Amit. Amit discovered Led Zeppelin. So just to give you an idea, he was the top of the top of the top. And you got his
Ray
attention.
Charles.
Ray Charles, on and on. This guy was amazing. And he was buddies with all these guys too. They loved him from what I heard about him, and he took care of his musicians. Very rare in the music industry. I think it's unheard of today. Releasing 1 album with the Joneses, Billy's playing interested Amit enough for him to use him on a production of folk rock trio, Devon Square. That must have been so cool, man, for him to ask you to come in to do another third-party gig. Billy would retire, and I want to talk about that because we all go through different parts of our lives, and to the young guitar players up there, it's up and down, man. The thing about guitar that's really cool is you can do it for an entire life. You know, some guys golf, some guys, you know, do other things. I play guitar in my older age here as a retired guy. But he retired for a period of time, but he returned to playing music with a local C&W band, the Darlings, and former Radio Kings frontman Brian Templeton, amongst others. So welcome to the show, Billy.
Thank you for inviting me.
Coming on down here from the North Country. And I like to start at the beginning because that's usually a good place to start. We did speak earlier, and he came from southern New Hampshire, Salem, New Hampshire, and we're about the same age, and we are not divulging our ages here, but we're basically the same sort of culture that we grew up in. The rock and roll culture is what I'd call it, you know. To me, it was the Beatles. Was it the Beatles for you?
Well, that's what made me discover the guitar as something I wanted to play.
Yeah.
But I was attracted to music early on, and going back to, well, my uncle was a music fan. And he's only a little older than me. He was like 6 years older than me. So.
Wow, yeah, so you had that close age of an uncle.
Plus, I don't know, there was a guitar, I don't know, the image of a guitar. So I'm watching Ozzie and Harriet with James Burton.
Right, and Ricky
playing
Nelson.
the Telecaster at the end.
No, yeah, was that? Yeah, that was Ricky Nelson, right?
Ricky Nelson, yeah. At the end of the show,
who was also
they were pushing, their son Ricky career, so they would do a little, they do a song at the end of the show, and there was this, this young guy playing this Telecaster, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and that's what I waited for the show.
Right.
And but I didn't, I didn't pick up on that's what I want to do until the Beatles.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a pretty common story.
Yeah, I tell you, like 45.
They changed the world.
45 guests, and we're all basically in the same ballpark age-wise, many of them. And the Beatles, almost 90% of them are Beatles. Some of the blues guys, like Ricky King.
He's
a real blues guy, And I didn't get into the blues until later. But with the Beatles, I don't know if it was about you, it's like I remember watching them and seeing my sisters, and I'm there, and seeing how the girls react, and I'm there. I don't know what they're doing. I want to be them.
No, I don't know either. I really don't. I can't. But it grabbed everybody's attention. And
a buddy of mine,
changed the world, really.
I played with for years. He was about 5 years older than me, and he maybe was putting it in a little bit more perspective. He says, Bill, he was old enough to realize that we were coming from the real, what we'd call straight music, really kind of just.
Well, it was,
and the Beatles were just such a departure.
Right.
And the Beatles, just like the Stones, they took a lot of the blues things that were out there and they rocked it up a bit.
Yeah.
And it related to kids our age, and back then, I don't know about Salem, New Hampshire. I grew up in Alston, Mass.
Small town.
Everybody started a band. Everybody started playing guitar.
We had a little local scene. There were like 4 bands in my high school.
Right.
All competing for the same dance gigs.
So you're about 10 in the mid-'60s or so?
I was 9 years old when I saw the Beatles on Ned Sullivan.
Right.
I was at my grandmother's house. My aunts were all talking about it. And I go, what the hell? What the heck?
Did they like it? I wonder if they hated it. They had long hair, and you look at their hair now. Back then, it wasn't that long.
Yeah, they didn't like it, but I was like, I was just changed.
Yeah. So when did you get your first guitar?
A couple of years later than that.
So you're
I started playing with. My folks weren't rich.
None of ours were.
And I just hounded them. I used to make my own guitars, like just the shapes.
And you still do, and we'll talk about this guitar.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It was like the image of it, but I really wanted to, and I finally talked my mom into getting me some lessons, and they rented a cheap acoustic classical guitar.
Rented?
Yeah, they rented
like a nylon string.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I took some lessons for a little while, and it was just up the road. And I remember my dad had a dry cleaning business, and I don't know, I was just messing around the shop, and the teacher drove by and said he had to move out of town. And he came to pick up the guitar, and my father says, well, what do you want for it? And I think he gave
like
$5.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So I had to keep the
What
guitar.
grade was that? Fifth?
I was in the 6th grade.
Fifth
grade.
Yeah.
No, 6th grade. Yeah, I was in the 6th grade when I started taking lessons with Bill's Guitar Studio. And
was he using a book? Was it Mel Bay?
Yeah, it was Mel Bay. This is a pick.
And so you were, learning to read.
Yeah, I started that, but I was just trying to get some dexterity and, get, muscle memory going,
Right. Learn all the chords.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't learn that much. I mean, he was only around for, a couple months.
Right.
And so then we moved down, my mom started taking me to this other music store where the guitar lessons were. They had guitar lessons available.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to learn what they were teaching me, so I didn't practice it.
And that's a story we hear often, right?
Yeah.
I bet you they're very straight, reading.
He was a nice guy, and he was just frustrated. It was frustrating him. So we told my mom, said, get him a book.
Yeah.
But I don't want to teach him anymore. He doesn't practice.
Right.
So he kind of kicked me out.
And I taught for a while. It does drive you crazy when you're a teacher when it's the same lesson over and over again.
Yeah.
And plus, when we're that age, we're doing a whole bunch of things. We're playing baseball, we're going to school. We're doing a lot of things that distract us.
Yeah.
Were you distracted, or was guitar a passion?
Guitar. Well, at that point, it was just another. It was a bit of a passion. I didn't have sports or anything like that. I wasn't into that. I was into riding my bicycle around.
Sure.
We lived in front of a drive-in movie theater, and me and my friends would ride our bikes around that. And just it wasn't a real neighborhood. It was a kind of a commercial area where I lived at that time, and but it was underlying. And then a friend of mine, I became friends with some other people that had guitars, and they had the passion. One friend in particular had the gift of just being really advanced really quickly. You know,
and God gives that to a few.
Yeah. I didn't have that. I mean, I was like, it took work for me to like, and he just sort of picked it up.
I'm the same way, man.
Yeah.
I was, as you call the PhD. I was poor, hungry, and driven. And that's what it was. I had no talent at all. It's just I worked 1,000 more hours than anyone else.
People think it's like some, you know, I guess eventually it does sort of some natural ability just comes into play, but. Anyway,
so did he help you?
He helped me, yeah. You know, we learned together, but he learned faster, and I would, I'd learn what he learned, and you know, basically, he was always much more ahead of me, so I didn't really get to teach him much. And we stayed friends for a long time until we just grew apart eventually. Yeah, that was it. I got into my first band with him.
How old?
I was in the 8th grade.
8th grade, yeah. That's about the time a lot of us get into a band, you know. And wouldn't you love to listen to how...
I didn't have an
It's like, you know...
Gloria.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, we learned Gloria and all that stuff. Well, actually, we had a song list. That band... My very first band was without him, but and we just we learned 2 songs to play at a school
function,
at a school talent show, and that after the talent show, that band fizzled out, and I got into this other band with my friend Joe, and we all plugged into one amp. The microphone went into that.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
And there was a neighborhood kid that joined the band. That lived next door to where we rehearsed at the drummer's house, and he had a Rickenbacker guitar and a Bassman amp, and he could sing, so he joined the band as a singer. But he always wanted to just start playing, which is natural. Yeah. And I didn't have an amp, so the first gig we had, it was at a church coffee house, and I got sick. So I didn't make the gig, and then after the gig was he ended up playing, and then they fired me.
Oh, really? Fired from you first?
I didn't have an amp, so So my mom took care of that. She saved her pennies and bought me a Fender amp, and I was on my way.
And isn't that the way? It's like I've always felt that as a parent, our job is we don't know what we have in our hands. Do we have the next greatest mathematician, the next greatest tennis player? You just feed whatever passion. Neither of my daughters I'm a pilot too. It's like I wanted to get them into. They were flying at 3 and 4 or 5 years old, and I'd give them the yoke and they'd go flying, but it never took. You just expose them to different things, and your mother must have seen that.
She was supportive, you know. She backed me up for a long time, and so there was, you know. So I got an amp and I got a guitar, and then I started to practice. It kind of kicked me in the butt to start working on stuff, and
were you using books?
I was attracted to the sound of a guitar, you know. I watched a couple of your shows, and Mark Bell was talking about how he was attracted to the fuzz tone.
Right.
And I, you know, a light bulb went off. I go, yeah. It was like when I heard Satisfaction, I was like, that sound. Yeah. And I started working on how to get that sound.
And for those of you who don't know what that's what he's talking about. And the minute we hear that, we love it. I love it. Jazz guys don't like it, but
well, you know, when I remember my mom I was too young to drive, obviously, so we'd go up to this music store up in Manchester, New Hampshire, and Larry, the salesman, he'd back me up a lot of times because, you know, I would tell my mom about I want to get a fuzz tone, and she'd go, what is that? And she'd ask,
what year are we talking now? 1970-ish?
This is the 60s. This is like 68. Yeah.
Because they were hard to find back in the late 60s.
Box tone vendors at this store was a pretty good supply house of instruments and stuff. And he goes, that makes the amp sound broken, so I didn't end up getting a fuzz tone because she didn't see the point in that.
And that is absolutely a great explanation as to what it is.
Yeah,
and that's what we love.
It makes the amp sound broken, yeah.
Right.
She also asked him, you know, he bends the, I broke a string.
Yeah.
And, you know, bending strings. And she goes, is he supposed to do that? And he
Why
said,
are you breaking strings?
She goes, you're not supposed, don't bend them, you know.
Again, another thing jazz guys don't like to do, bend strings.
So he told her it was okay. That's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So it was all
yeah.
right. But I just joined in. I just had some high school bands.
And again, one thing, you know, I don't care if you went to Berkeley, New England, or whatever. We're all self-taught. We're all self-taught, and we're all huge thieves. We see something another guy does, it's like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah,
And so we're self-taught and we're thieves along the way. Because again, we're young kids at home, we didn't have YouTube that would take every note. And I'm amazed at, and I was never great at like going note for note. And I was
never good at that.
You know, I like, you know, if it's an A minor, I know what to play, you know, and it's like, I'm not going to listen to another guy do it, but some guys, Tony is amazing at that. He can get the exact things. I'm like, I would go out of my mind doing that for hours.
Yeah.
And they transcribe it. Some of these guys transcribe every note.
Well, the people I knew that were just, they had good ears and they had great dexterity in my high school years.
And again, I work with I do a duo, and I'm with a young female vocalist in that, and she's always amazed that I can hear songs almost immediately and play them almost immediately. And it's like I'm there, I don't know, 55 years playing guitar. I can hear things. These two things in the side of your head are very helpful.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So you're in high. So get me up to middle school. You're playing in those sort of bands.
I just advanced and I just kept practicing and I played in a couple of different bands. Sometimes I eventually playing with some older guys because
I did that too.
I started to get good.
Yeah.
You know, good enough to play with some older guys.
What kind of stuff?
Well, that was the thing. There was this time when like Cream and Hendrix came out, where the style of guitar changed from the Louie type guitar solos, the real thin, you know. Yeah, but the solos, they were like, you know, they were kind of stiff and they weren't bluesier. You know,
and it was all in the box, the pentatonic box.
Everything changed. A guitar, you know, it was, and I was like a young kid that was learning that stuff.
Right.
And so they wanted to be able to play that kind of thing, and that's how I developed it. And by playing with other guys, playing, you know, Jethro Tull songs and stuff like that.
Yeah. Sitting on a park bench.
Yeah, but I wasn't. I mean, blues was like I was attracted to blues. I didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
My uncle had Rolling Stones records and Animal albums and stuff like that. And my favorite songs were like Little Red Rooster. I didn't know that was a Holland song.
Yeah.
I was, you know.
And none of us did back in those days. We didn't know a lot of the stuff that Led Zeppelin doing in bands were like that.
Yeah.
We're doing came from way prior.
No.
Yeah.
But you read about it. You read about what's influenced them, and you know, and if you're curious, you go back and study the roots, the original stuff,
because that's what Eric Clapton did.
Yeah. So, and that's it's important to learn that, and I stress that with a lot of musicians that I still play with now. Some of them aren't rooted; they just don't have any desire to
reach back
and study that stuff. I mean, the players that I play with that are usually a lot more versatile.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So you got
they have a more soul and feel in their playing.
So what happened in high school with music?
I just played in nothing. I just played in high school bands.
Right. Were they good?
After I went to college and for a year and really wasn't interested. When I flunked out, I figured I was asked to go audition for a band down on the Cape. And you've heard the name because Rick Russell was in that band.
Right.
And it was called Orphan Annie. And they lived down, I don't know, I can't remember, near Hyannis somewhere. Dennis, maybe it was. And at the same time, I had gotten an offer. I used to go drive in with my friends to this a consignment used guitar shop in Cambridge.
Whereabouts in Cambridge?
It was in Harvard Square, but the original, it was in Harvard Square, 12A Elliott Street. I was offered a job there, and I had an interest in vintage guitars, and I'm a tinkerer, and I like to mess with stuff like that. And guitars at that time the quality was kind of, old guitars were the thing to get.
We're talking 73, 74.
73,
right?
73, 74, yeah. And so I went and auditioned for the Orphan Annie, and they offered me that gig, and I decided that I would not do that because it was a cover band. We played the circuit, and I really, after playing in cover bands up in my own neighborhood, I didn't see a future in that. It was.
And you were correct.
Yeah.
Right?
I wanted to play.
Covers are what covers are. They make money. Yeah. Today, it's not going to get you anywhere.
At that time, I wanted a career. I wanted to,
Sure.
I wanted to make records and play original stuff. And I figured if I worked in a guitar shop in Cambridge, I would network.
Right. It's the epicenter. I used to go to Cambridge Commons.
Right.
Grateful Dead played there.
Yeah.
On Sundays, they were like huge bands. Did you ever go to those concerts?
Never. I wasn't old enough to. Yeah. I wasn't hitchhiking then.
Yeah. But okay, so
I took the job.
Did you get an apartment in Cambridge?
No, I used to commute. It was a half hour. Traffic wasn't like it is now.
I know.
I used to zip right in. Parking was easy because I just parked and I'd get the ticket and I wouldn't pay it.
Right. Back then they had no computers. Back then I went to 4 years at Berkeley during that same time. Got about this is off the record, right? Statute of limitations, $700 or $800 over 4 years. I know.
Nobody paid their tickets.
Right.
No, So I had a stack of tickets, but. Within a few months, my boss was friends with this guy, Willie Alexander.
Right.
And he was producing or executive producing an independent single for Willie. And I went and he wanted to hook me up with him. Willie had been in a band called The Lost that opened the Boston Tea Party, and so he had a record deal at
he was
one
a huge
point.
front man, right?
He was well, I don't know if he wasn't the main lead singer in The Lost, but he ended up in the Velvet Underground after Lou Reed left.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
And did a tour of Europe. So I heard, the antenna went up when I heard, Velvet Underground, because I liked Lou Reed, and I liked that whole I was into glam rock, and
sure.
Lou Reed was part of the David Bowie scene and Iggy Pop and all that. And so I ended up hooking up with Willie, and he needed a band for a gig. So I had been jamming with some guys that were, ironically enough, ex-members of Orphan Annie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so we formed a band and started to get attention locally, and started the Rat scene had started coming up, the punk rock scene. We weren't really a punk rock band, but I didn't really think many of the bands were. They were all just rock and roll bands playing their own music.
Right.
Some had more ability than the others, but everybody were decent players.
And they were Willie Alexander. They headlined everywhere.
Yeah.
Headlined Bun Rowdy's all the time. Bun Rowdy's was.
That was after I left. When the Boom Boom Band was only together 2 years, 76 to 78.
Yeah.
In the first year, we started going down to New York and playing at Max's Kansas City and CBGB's.
What was that like?
It was great. It was like the scene had already gotten some
How many
momentum.
guys? Four in the band?
The four of us.
Like four in a van?
Yeah.
All the stuff thrown in, and you're sitting on the
driving
amps.
down in a blizzard, freezing.
Right. And making what, $100? $50? Any bucks?
Anything, yeah. I don't even remember. It wasn't that much. It wasn't enough.
It didn't pay. Well, gas was what, 20 cents a gallon back then, so you could do it. Maybe 50 cents a gallon.
It wasn't the, but we would like crash out on floors and stuff like that. We'd play 2 nights at CBGB's or something, and but we got the attention of this of a record producer down in New York, Craig Leon, who had produced Climax Blues Band and the Ramones' first album. And he got us a deal with MCA, and then from that we started to record. And while we were recording,
and that's a major MCA.
Yeah. It was a big label who were on it, and Leonard Skinner, and I guess they wanted to get in on the whole punk rock scene, which we were lumped into.
Were you edgy, like an edgy band?
It was a raw band. Yeah,
right.
It was.
What were you using back then?
I had a half-stack 100-watt Marshall amp. And I would use a deluxe reverb, or I used to borrow Willie's little Vox Cambridge tube. He had a little tube combo. It was an old Vox.
Would you switch between amps? Is that
it just depended on what I felt like using. I mean, you could mic up the little amps and it sounded great.
Right.
And so yeah, that's what I was
using.
What was
your guitar?
Huh?
What was your guitar?
I had, because I worked in that guitar store, I always wanted a 59 Burst, Les Paul Burst. So I actually,
do you still have that?
Huh?
Do you still have that?
Not that one. I got another one. But I've always had a Burst since the mid '70s. And I still play old Les Pauls on occasion, but mostly I play these Tellys and Strats.
Yeah, I have a Telly too. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like a toy to me.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. But
what happened with that band? Did you get to record for MCA?
Yeah, we did 2 records.
You did 2 albums.
Yeah, we toured we did a tour for a couple months with Elvis Costello on one of his early tours.
Did you get to meet Elvis?
Oh yeah.
Was he cool?
Sometimes.
Oh really? A rock star thing?
He was.
He's like exactly our age.
Just a moody guy, and he had some days where he was very friendly. The band were friendly, except for the keyboard player was kind of.
Yeah,
he was.
I think he still has that same keyboard player.
He still does. Yeah, on that tour. I mean, they had an attitude that they had to live up to, and they did. They put a few college promoters in tears.
I bet. But I like those first few albums of Elvis.
Great stuff. I watched them put together the song "Pump It Up" on a sound check.
Oh, really?
Yeah. In Pittsburgh.
And that's a great song to this day.
Yeah. I love that song.
So what happened?
It just, we didn't sell a lot of records. And it just fizzled out. I lost interest in it. I was young. I was 23.
Right.
And, and I just figured something else will come along.
Did you realize where you were at, though? Like, major tours, major record company. I mean, that's...
Yeah, driving in limos and flying everywhere.
That's as good as it gets.
It was fun. Yeah, watching the Flintstones driving down Park Avenue.
And back then, sometimes they give you 3, 4, 5 albums. Back then, and not today. 1 album and done.
Yeah, they probably would have. We actually, when we broke up, I remember that Craig. I was on the phone with Craig and said, we're not getting along. We didn't get along at the end between the band and Willie. And we patched it up like a couple years later.
Was he doing the lead singer itis thing?
He was drunk a lot. He had an alcohol problem, and
that'll kill you too.
And he was, it's enough said about that. It was like it
fell apart.
It fell apart, and I was young and arrogant enough to think that something else would come along, and something else did.
And what did it lead to? Did it lead to nervous?
No, I didn't really. I played with Mark Bell for a couple of weeks.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
in that band.
After Thunder Train broke up, he had with Greg Morton. They were doing some recording, and I did a session, and I ended up playing some gig.
Mark's a great guy. I love Mark.
He's
had some health problems, but he's back rock and rolling with my buddy Johnny Press.
Great frontman. Yeah. It was called The Hits, and it was really Thunder Train without Steve and the guitar player, and. But I joined this guy Alan Estes band.
That rings a bell.
Yeah, he was kind of the Jonathan Jonathan Swift's scene.
Oh yeah, I used to play there all the time.
He played like the Cambridge scene more. You know, there was a Boston rock scene, and then there was.
We talking late 70s now?
Late 70s, 80s, 1980.
Yeah.
I joined Alan for about a year.
Were you still at the store?
No, I quit that. Once we got our record deal, I stopped working there. I hung out there. My friends still work there, and you know, Billy West worked there after I did. Billy Cole from the Real Kids worked there. You know, it was like a rotating bunch of musicians that was an easy job. It was fun. Yeah. I had a great time working there. Yeah. Jonathan Richman used to come in and serenade.
Cool.
The store. You know, it was fun. But I played with Alan for a while. Then I joined up with Andy Mendelsohn, who was in Andy Pratt's band, and then from that I joined Andy Pratt's band, and I did some like a year or 2 years maybe, and we did some couple small little bit of touring, but not much, but and some recording. I played on his record, Fun in the First World. From that, at the same time, I had started another band with this guy, David Finnerty, who was in a band called the Road Apples, who had a national hit with a song called "Let's Live Together."
Didn't Andy have some national hits?
Andy, Avenging Andy.
Right.
Avenging Annie.
Right, I knew he did. So, what was that other band again that got a national hit that you just mentioned?
With now you might ask me that.
Well, you mentioned it. I don't know.
I forget.
But where were you then? Then what happened?
It was in '80. It was in the early '80s. Oh, with Finnerty, David Finnerty. Right. Yeah, the Road Apples. We started a band called the Jackals.
Yeah. And that rings a bell too.
Yeah, we played for many years, and we were like out of sync with the Boston scene because they were doing. It was more synth pop. Was really
that
popular.
Cars influence.
And we were a rock and roll guitar band. You know, doing something not that far.
And did you not have an image? Because the Cars had a whole packaged image.
We thought we had an image. We weren't ugly guys. You know, we dressed in the leather pants and all that stuff. But we just didn't.
Where were you playing?
But we played Bun Ratties a lot. Right. We played the Rat. But you know, we never got the headline. We played the Channel.
Yep. Yeah. I played them all. Yeah.
That band just kind of filtered along while I joined other bands. I joined the Chartbusters in '84. While I was in
Robin Lane, another band.
Yeah. While I was in that band, I went back to college and finished. I finished college, but I was going to put playing on the back burner again. But after Robin Lane, what happened?
And she was playing big gigs, and she had some great songs.
Yeah.
You still playing with her now? Because we got a picture of you.
Once in a while I play with her, yeah. But after our last gig, Asa Brebner, the other guitar player, founding member, died a week after that last show. So she's playing again, but she's got her own new thing together. It's like, so I don't know.
How were you getting these gigs? People just knew about you.
Yeah, they call me and ask me to join up.
Yeah.
After that, I joined the Eaters and I'd fill in time with a couple other projects. Those bands.
And the Nervous Eaters were as big as it got in the local scene.
Yeah. They had broken up, and then they got back together again.
So let me interrupt you there, because we have a video of the Nervous Eaters, and it's introduced by Charles Lockwithera, who was the biggest rock and roll disc jockey in the area back when disc jockeys could actually decide what they played. So can you tell us any more about this video?
I was in Norwood. He had this cable show called Your Mother's on the Roof or something. I think that's what it's called.
Cool.
And we it was pretty frenetic, but it's good. It really represents what the band sound. It was called Today and Tomorrow. The song.
You have great tone in that. It sounds. It looks like it was all live.
It was a deluxe reverb with an overdrive pedal.
Cool.
I like the sound on it.
Without further ado, the Nervous Eaters.
The Nervous Eaters! In the when he gets up and it seems like so petty. And tomorrow and today, and the next day will always be the same. And tomorrow and today, the next day will always be the
So we are back. So tell me, how far did the Nervous Eaters get?
Let me see, that would be 86.
Are those guys still around?
Yeah, they're back together again. He put in a new lineup. Him and Brad.
I actually went on iTunes this morning. I saw that they had something from 2022.
Yeah, they have they're doing their second new album. Yeah. When he started to put it back together again, he asked me, but he was rehearsing down in Cape Cod. And I didn't want to drive.
I mean, from that video, which I re-looked at earlier today.
It's a different sounding band now.
No, but it should have been big. It was the time, the tone of the time, the look, the feel. It reminded me like the Ramones, that kind of stuff. That this should sell.
But we were really Yardbirds influenced.
Yeah,
it was. That's one of my favorite old bands was the Yardbirds. Eric Clapton.
Yeah, I love that
Jeff
stuff
Beck
too.
especially.
Now, were you on their album in '76? I messaged you earlier today.
Which one?
But, for Nervous Eaters.
No.
You weren't on that. Was that after? So
they had broken up, and then he had another band in between, and then he started to put it back together to do another record. And I'm on that one called Hot Steel and Acid.
I'll look for that. It's one of the songs was I have it for brains.
I'm on that one.
Oh, really? I have it, and as you can imagine, and I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah,
but I mean, this can't get on.
It was
couldn't
a fun
get on
band.
the radio.
I love that band. It was. We had.
And they were playing all the big places.
Yeah, we played the Channel.
They were headlining, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were headlining.
Yeah.
And record company interest?
No, we didn't get any record company interest.
Yeah.
And then it fizzled out due to people were starting to get into drugs, and it was falling apart.
It was a thing of the time, man, and it's like, God, if you could go back in time and say, man, wake up, you got an opportunity.
Right.
Because that band sounded as good as anybody. Could have gone worldwide.
Right.
Should have gone worldwide.
Well, when it fizzled out, Brad and I decided we were going to start a band. And we'd do it the way we wanted to do it. And, kind of inspired by the Georgia Satellites, because the synth pop thing, they kind of broke that because they were like back to two guitars,
right,
and just playing really raw,
straight into the amp
type
thing,
Yeah. And so I figured, well, you know what? Maybe that music is viable again. Maybe some people would want to hear it.
Yeah.
So we had a drummer that we had seen we liked a lot, John Sands, who was playing. He was playing with a couple of different people, country bands and stuff. But he was a great drummer, and then we looked around we played with a couple of different singers, but nothing gelled the way we wanted. And I just said, my old pal from the Jackals is great, and he writes. He's a prolific writer, so we just got together and we just started rehearsing and writing songs together. And
what was the name of that band?
That was the Joneses.
The Joneses, okay.
Yeah.
Without further ado, we have a video of the Joneses called "Don't You Know." What can you tell us about that one?
That was after we had signed with Atlantic. They put a big budget together and did this fancy video.
Did you still have that connection with Ahmet? Is that how you got the Atlantic?
Yeah. Well, I got the connection with Ahmet because of the Joneses.
Oh, because of the Joneses.
He had heard a demo of us it didn't take long for that band to garner some interest. It had a great chemistry.
Yeah.
And and it had a sound.
And isn't that the way with art?
And it just,
or like a baseball team or something.
Right away, it was, we just connected really well, and it had a great sound, and we played it together very well, and the songs were good, and we got interest from a manager. There was a local guy that sold studio equipment. His name was Fletcher. He had a company called Mercenary Audio, and he came and engineered some of our stuff, and he loved the band. He saw us at Bun Rat, he's just, I think, or the Rat, and he loved the band, and he got behind us, and he helped us with a demo tape, and he sent it to a lawyer friend of his in New York. And this is how weird this stuff happens. It's like the lawyer's office, he rented an office from this guy named David Sonnenberg, who was Meatloaf's manager, and a couple other people, and it was an old brownstone building with a big open staircase, and this lawyer, what was his name? Anyway, he was playing the tape, and David could hear it, and he called him on his phone and said, "Who is that you're playing like that?"
Well, we're talking 1990, right?
This was in '89.
Okay.
Or it might have been '88. We started the band in '88, I think. Yeah, I think it was in '88, and then and it was only a few months, within 6 months, that tape got made, and he had heard it. They asked us to come down and play. They rented this little room, and it was like it was half the size of this studio.
Yes,
it was really small. We all played. We played in front of them. They said, "Great, I'll draw up a contract, a management contract." A couple months later, he's shopping the tape, and he just sort of, the manager says to me, "I got a meeting with Amit in Atlantic," and I was like, Amit, it was a name that I had heard for
of course.
He
was the top person in the industry.
He
was.
Years, he was an icon,
30 years.
And it blew. It was. I was just thrilled that we got the attention of that guy, and that's who I wanted to sign with. And everybody kind of felt that same way. Our manager felt a little apprehensive about it because of some business history with other people in that label, and that's what happened. That kind of. He would have been right, but I don't have any regrets because I got to work with. I got to work on Atlantic Records and stuff.
Okay, without further ado, let's listen to "Don't You Know" by the Jones.
Don't you know
we are back here. So what happened with the Joneses? Because you were there. You were right there.
Oh, we had
at the altar. You say, okay, please sign me up. And, and you were signed.
We got signed by Ahmet. I think we were his last signing before he retired. We went down in June. We did the BCN Rumble, but we had already had an agreement with Atlantic, so we kept it secret. So we could do the gig.
Because the winning of that was you got a record contract, theoretically. I don't know if anybody ever did.
Yeah, no, I think it was a curse to it or something.
So what year? The 1990 Rumble?
This was 89.
And that was the Rumble was a big deal. People don't realize how big that was.
It was big, yeah. It was a big deal.
Because back then, you either got signed or you broke up.
Right.
You know, there was no way going direct to the public. You couldn't sell your stuff directly. There was no internet. So you either got signed where the record company could push you worldwide, or you're going to play local gigs.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, it's a different business now.
Right, right.
So, we got signed. He got assigned a producer from our manager, who we, had a good time with. We enjoyed working with him. And we started recording in New York at the Power Station.
The Power Station.
Yeah.
Like the #1 record company, #1
recording studio,
record executive, #1 studio.
Started
you know who owns that now? Berkeley owns that. They bought the whole building
in New York.
Yeah, and it's now a Berkeley. Because
I know it got sold.
I don't think people are going to studios anymore. They're doing it at home.
At the time, it was owned by John Bon Jovi's cousin.
I heard that. And
he had a couple cousins that were working in there, but.
Did you know a guy, John Moretti?
Tony Bon Jovi was the owner of it.
Did you know John Moretti? He used to be the booking guy at BBC. No.
No, I didn't.
He told me that story.
Oh, okay.
It was Bon Jovi's cousin.
Yeah. He owned this, and John Bon Jovi, I guess, worked there.
Right.
Before.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
I heard the other day he's a billionaire. I missed all of it. I didn't. I was your typical Berkeley guy. I was not listening to that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they were good, but whatever. I missed that.
No. So anyway, we recorded our record. We took a couple months to do it.
I mean, all I heard was that, and that was pro.
Yeah, that was the song that got some airplay. We got pockets of airplay throughout the country when they released it.
Yeah.
But while we recorded it, the co-founder of Atlantic, which was Ahmet's brother Neswi, passed away. And Ahmet kind of stepped aside, just kind of wanted to give up some of his... He gave up the CEO position. So we didn't have the guy behind us anymore. So the guy that took over didn't really...
That's how it goes in that business.
Yeah, that's the way it worked. Our manager had a history with the guy that took over. That's why I said earlier that our manager's instinct was correct, even though I don't regret it.
Yeah. And so that fell apart then.
The record was kind of tanked. They gave us a couple weeks priority from promotion, and accidentally released Robert Plant's record 2 weeks ahead of time.
Wow.
So that took away our 2 weeks of priority. So we, it broke up. And, And we went back to the Power Station. They liked us a lot, and they let us go in and do a demo after we lost our deal, and then that got shopped around by a little bit, but it was cold and we didn't get anything out of it.
So we only have a few minutes left. Take us up today. What are you doing musically these days?
I started. Oh, sure.
We got a dog in the studio. He's a studio dog. Yeah.
Let's see. I ended up getting back into playing. I joined Rick Russell's old band, the Boston Baked Blues Band. Right. He had left.
And that was a big band name.
Yeah, I did that for a couple months. I just started playing again. I missed it. I gave it up for a year. You sound great, man.
You heard him earlier.
Yeah. For a year, I didn't pick up the guitar after the Atlantic deal fell through.
And that can get you down.
Yeah. So, but I missed it.
Yeah.
So I play now with on occasion with Brian Templeton.
Mm-hmm.
He has a band called. You actually interviewed his guy that he's playing with now. He ended up joining this band, the Delta Generators.
Oh, that's Charlie O'Neill.
Yes.
I love Charlie.
Yeah, nice guy, great player.
And I love hearing him play, man. He just posted something yesterday on Facebook that I really liked, and they got a new song out, and it's really kind of that crunchy blues stuff.
Yeah. No, Brian's really enjoying this time in that band. But on occasion we get together and play, and then we have this lineup that we play in Gloucester with the drummer from Fairport Convention,
cool,
Dave Maddox, and Dave Saganaro.
Do you rehearse or you just jam?
We just go and play.
Like Saturday nights or like a Sunday afternoon?
It's a Thursday. It's a Thursday that Dave Saganaro has every
cool.
Thursday at this place called the Rum
It's
Line.
not a jam. It's just it is a set band.
It's a set band that he puts together every week, and four or five times a year we do it.
Cool.
And it's magical. It's it's another band that has chemistry. I play, and about 8 years ago, some friends of mine from high school said, they wanted to play a benefit, so we had a good time. So we just kept doing it. So I'm doing that, and occasional other things. I play with this other guy locally, Phil Aiken, and I also play in a country band that it's not playing much, but it was playing more often like 20 years ago when I first started doing it. Was a band called the Darlings. It was kind of a country rock band.
That rings a bell too.
Yeah.
And you're doing an album, right? Aren't you?
I'm doing an album with Phil.
That's where you're going right now, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do a session after this. He also puts different things together. We did a couple of tribute things at the Lizard Lounge in Cambridge. One was a Martha Hoople.
Yeah, you told me about that.
And he wrote a bunch of songs in that style. It doesn't really sound like it, but we're working on that record, his solo record. And then he also has another tribute band that he put together. It's all Traffic, and we do that with Milt Reeder.
Yeah.
Do you know Milt Reeder? You should interview him. He's great.
I'll look at it.
He plays in a band called 4-Piece Suit. And who else is in it? There's a bunch of local, Paul Alstrand, Jerome Dupre from Vapors of Morphine, and Phil.
Cool.
Oh, Chris Cody's singing.
So let's do something that, like an E7. We've got dogs, we've got people coming in. Let's jam out on like an E7 thing. See you next time.